BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast on Friday the 6th of December. I'm Iona Ballantyne and here's what's coming up this weekend.
Up against Bammer and he wins that battle of strength, plays it into Cameron, takes a touch and finishes!
Can Hearts haul themselves off the foot of the table as high-scoring Dundee come to Tynecastle? Also,
His Gale knocks it for Campbell! Game over! 3 goals and 3 points, heading back to Easter Road. Those fans have had to wait a long time for that.
after a morale-boosting win, can Hibs get anything at Celtic Park? And
it's King into the penalty, touches it back, Sims, goal! Ross County are in absolute dreamland here.
will the ghosts of last season return to haunt Rangers as they travel to Dingwall?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, joining me this morning, former Kilmarnock and Rangers goalkeeper Cammy and Ayr United's former Hamilton, Aberdeen, Livingston and Scotland defender Mikey Devlin. Now, both of you, I did ask our producer for 2 good guests on my birthday, and you are the 2 that he gave me, so I hope you feel honoured for that.
Indeed you do. Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Iona.
Thank you. Well, there is loads to get through this morning. Obviously, it's a huge weekend in the Scottish Premiership. We'll get into things in a bit more depth shortly. But before we get into it, just briefly, Cammy, who do you think needs the 3 points most this weekend?
For me, Iona, I think we've got to look at Hearts. They're desperate on the points. They want to get off the foot of the table. And yeah, listen, time's ticking along. The new manager's been in now for a number of weeks. Results have slightly improved, but just haven't been where Hearts want to be. So it's an opportunity this weekend, being at home to Dundee. It'll be a game that they'll want to go and get the 3 points and kickstart their season.
Mikey, who do you think needs the 3 points most this weekend?
Yeah, I'd agree with what Cammy said, Iona. I think Hearts are in a position that they won't be happy with. The manager's been in for a while now. I think they weren't far away from getting the result at the weekend against Aberdeen. I thought it was a fairly strong performance. Upset a little bit by the injuries and the kind of disruption that caused, but I think they'll be looking to try and kick on and most certainly need the 3 points at the weekend.
Well, you did both mention Hearts. Let's actually start at Tynecastle for today, because kind of as you say, no side has earned fewer points at home in the Scottish Premiership this season than Hearts, just 6. They've won 1 of their last 8 home games in the competition. Cammy, why is their form currently not as they want it?
Listen, I think the season's been very difficult for Hearts. Obviously, they've got European football to work with as well, going along with the domestic stuff. So it's been difficult. There's been a change of manager there. Obviously, the new managers came in with fresh ideas. It looks as if it has improved. Probably not the way exactly that all the fans would have wanted it to immediately improve, because the quality of players they've got on the pitch, for me, they should be getting results. And I think this one tomorrow, I think it's a really important game for Hearts as a club and the players that are on the pitch, because the fans are very frustrated with where they are this season. So they'll be looking for an improvement, and the improvement starts with getting 3 points at home, and that's certainly the case tomorrow. They'll be looking for all 3 points against Dundee.
I think all Hearts fans also are they're waiting and hoping to see Lawrence Shankland get back to his form of last season. Mikey, how does he turn that around? What do you think is going on at the moment?
It was always going to be difficult for Lawrence to replicate that kind of form, and I think what he's done for Hearts in the last couple of seasons has been remarkable. However, that quality doesn't leave you, and I think at the start of the season, Lawrence may be suffering with the team maybe struggling a little bit more. I think it's not a coincidence that the 3 teams outside Celtic and Rangers who are participating in European competition had sticky starts to the season. But Hearts, I think, are kind of still in that moment a little bit, and Lawrence just might be struggling for that, or kind of feeling the consequences of that, should I say. So I'm sure Lawrence is still fully confident in himself and fully aware of what he's capable of, and he's just probably looking for that little bit of a break, that little thing to drop in front of goal for him, and when the first goal comes, I'm sure he'll not look back.
Well, in contrast, Dundee, they've had a good start to the season. Cammy, what do you think's behind their good form?
Again, consistency. Tony Docherty's a very good manager. He's came in, he's brought in a number of good players. They've got a good work ethic around their team. They're consistent with their selection as well when he can be. And yeah, I just think they've got good quality all over the pitch. They are a threat when they're at home. Simon Murray up front typifies the way they are as a team, the work rate that he puts in. He's got goals in him. So yeah, they're a good side. They'll be a big threat to Hearts tomorrow. And again, Tony Docherty will definitely be going to Tynecastle expecting to take points, because away Hearts are sitting in the table. He'll know it's a difficult game, but it's one that they'll want to, again, try and get points from away from home.
Mikey, how impressed have you been by Lyle Cameron? 3 goals in his last 2 games, 4 goals and 4 assists in the Premiership this season. Can you see him adding to that this weekend?
Yeah, I think he's always capable. He's one of those players that has got that bit of quality. Is capable of seeing a pass. You know, those stats speak for themselves, and he's adding goals to his game as well. I think he's really stepped up. Having lost Luke McCowan as well, I think that would have been a concern for Dundee at the start of the season. But I think Lyle Cameron has really kicked on and really taken or shouldered that responsibility in the middle of the park for Dundee, and really being that kind of main player for him, which I'm sure Tony Docherty's absolutely delighted about.
Just going back to Hearts briefly, I mean, this week Chief Executive Andrew McKinlay said he's adamant that Hearts will move off the bottom of the Scottish Premiership and end the season in the top 6. Cammy, can you see that happening?
Listen, when you look at the table just now, Iona, it's only 9 points to get yourself into 5th position, but they need to turn it around pretty quickly. There's going to be loads of games coming up. I feel as if this period coming up for Hearts is really important, because again, if they can turn it tomorrow and they take momentum into the Christmas period, where we know there's a lot of games in a short period of time, then they can soon climb that league. I don't think that's out with their realms at the moment. They can definitely get into the top 6 if they start getting the 3 points, but it needs to start tomorrow.
Well, a huge game for them this weekend. Let's move on to Celtic Park, though. Celtic at home to Hibs. Now, Hibs have made their worst start to a top-flight season since 1982-83. Mikey, can you see it getting any better for them?
I think following on from the result of the weekend, which was one that they desperately needed, to be honest, to getting that 3 points against Motherwell, but Celtic was probably the last team or the last fixture that they wanted off the back of that. They probably wanted to use that bit of momentum and confidence that they got to go and try and kick on and put 2 wins back to back. But I can't see anything other than a Celtic victory at Celtic Park this weekend, unfortunately for Hibs. And I think ultimately they'll need to focus at this game as a kind of one-off, if you like, go and try and use the confidence they got from last week, and it's a bit of a free hit to a certain degree, which it's not something I like saying going to Celtic Park or Ibrox, but ultimately that's what this is for Hibs. They won't be expected to get the 3 points. Celtic are an incredibly strong side at the moment, and kind of dealing with anybody that's put in front of them, so it's going to be a challenge for Hibs, but one that maybe if everything goes right on the day, Celtic aren't quite at their flowing best, and the Hibs can bring that level of performance that they brought last weekend, then you never know.
Cammy, is anyone in Scotland going to beat Celtic this season, going by their current form?
It's difficult to see anyone at this moment of time beating Celtic this season, but again, there's a long way to go, as Brendan Rodgers said after the game against Aberdeen midweek. I think Hibs will be hoping there's another storm coming in to give them a half chance of getting any result at Celtic Park. And as they seen over last weekend, that Celtic were 5-0 up after 40 minutes, so they need to be aware of the threat that's there from Celtic. But it's an opportunity for David Gray's side to defensively test themselves. There's been loads of question marks this season over their character, the way they've defended, individual errors, so they'll need to get that all right to get any result at Celtic Park this weekend.
Mikey, do you think that Hibs still have issues at the back? And if so, what do they do this weekend against Celtic?
I think in the Motherwell game, anyway, for Hibs, I think Dave had shifted to a back 5. And I think with the Cadden twins on either side, that extra centre-back, getting it at the back 3, I think Ekpiteta wasn't available. And other than that, that's their strongest kind of defensive setup that they could get. I think going to the back 5 allows the Cadden twins to both be in the team in probably their favourite positions. That extra body there, in the middle of the back 3, if you like, I think gives them a bit of extra solidity. And that'll be needed going into the game at Celtic Park, where they're going to need to be robust, they're going to need to be switched on and fully concentrated. But I think it gives them that quality and outlet at wing back as well to try and support in an attacking sense through the Cadden twins. So, of course, there's been question marks over Hibs defensively this season, but I think Dave will be hoping that he's found the kind of formula to maximise the strengths of his team and certainly in a defensive aspect.
But then they're coming up against someone like Nicholas Kuhn, who's been involved in more goals than any other player in the Scottish Premiership this season. Cammy, he'll probably be looking to add more on Saturday, won't he?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, if Hibs want to test themselves against an attacking force, Celtic are the team to definitely do that, because the players they've got at the top end of the pitch, Kyogo, Nicholas Kuhn, Maeda, listen, it's endless. Their midfield are so strong with good plays. A number of players in there. There was the big debate over, was it Bernardo or Luke McCowan that comes in, Hatate. There's so many options for Brendan Rodgers. So it's a real difficult task for Hibs, and one, as Mikey said before, they're not wanting to write this game off, but I don't think this defines their season.
Well, they did have that tough game at Pittodrie on Wednesday, and then they're back in Champions League action next week. Mikey, do you expect them to rotate their squad for this one?
I think there's a chance they will, but as Cammy touched on, the depth of the squad and the quality that they have, if and when Brendan Rodgers feels it's necessary to kind of rotate players and freshen things up, the 11 on the pitch doesn't suffer at all. And I think that Celtic are in a place just now, whoever comes into the team wants to stake a claim to stay in the team as well. So, of course, you mentioned Nicholas Kuhn, Iona. I think that's a player that's going to play irrespective of whether there's any changes or not, and his quality's there for all to see. So Hibs have got a huge task on their hands, in terms of whoever plays in that game, whether Celtic choose to rotate or not. They're going to be met with a Celtic team that's full of confidence, full of quality, and will cause anybody issues on the day.
It is really tough games for Hearts and Hibs this weekend. If they don't win, when do they start panicking?
Hearts have obviously, they've pressed the panic button early on, and they've removed Stephen Naismith from being their manager and brought in a new manager. So I think they'll be expecting a reaction this weekend. I think they're expecting a result. It's different for Hibs. I think they got a big result last weekend for David Gray away to Motherwell. The performance as well, for me, was completely different from what I'd seen this season. As Mikey said, very organised, looked solid at the back, but played with intensity, a good press. So he'll be very pleased with what he's seen last weekend. They need results soon, but I don't expect there'll be too much pressure on them to get a result this weekend.
Mikey, what about you? When do the panic stations start? Or have they started?
I think probably internally that there's the two clubs at slightly different places. Obviously, Hearts have moved to bring in a new manager. Hibs have stuck by Dave Gray publicly as well. So I think that the result of the weekend massively helps in terms of how everyone's feeling probably at Hibs just now, despite the fact they play Celtic this weekend. For Hearts, they need that win, they need that boost of that, and what that result that Hibs got at the weekend, and they need that soon. We've seen in the past, the longer these things go, the harder it becomes to try and get out of that kind of difficult moment that you're in. That moment becomes a difficult season. And obviously, as Cammy touched on, they're not that far away from being able to get to the top six. So kind of breaking that rhythm of kind of not getting the positive results that they want is really important. And the sooner they do that, then the quicker, I'm sure, with the quality both squads have got, they can get to where they want to be.
Let's now move on, though, to Dundee United versus Kilmarnock, two of your former sides. Cammy, how do you see this one going?
Well, certainly in recent form, you would fancy Dundee United, especially being up at Tannadice. Kilmarnock have really, really struggled this season. But again, Derek McInnes will be looking for a reaction from the absolute hammering they got at Ibrox on Wednesday night. And it was concerning for me watching that one come in, that Kilmarnock were so easy to beat. And it could have been more as well. It was a huge scoreline, but it certainly could have been more. Robbie McCrory had a good game in goals, a number of good saves, but it's been really concerning the way that Kilmarnock. I thought it was the hangover of European football at the start of the season. There was a victory earlier on, and then they had the international break, and they just never seemed to have recovered from it. And again, this is going to be a tough game for Derek McInnes, but he'll definitely want to try and break the rhythm of defeats that they've been facing and draws. They'll want to try and get a win. Only 3 wins this season isn't good enough for Kilmarnock. and they are in a relegation battle at this moment in time, so they need to change that quickly.
Which is disappointing given the season that they had last season when things were going so well. And after that defeat midweek, Mikey, as a player, how do you get over a result like that?
I think in football, the best way to get over it's a game coming quickly. Unfortunately, with that game being midweek, they then have the opportunity the weekend against Dundee United, which, of course, given the place that they're in, will be a difficult game for Kilmarnock. However, I think knowing Derek McInnes well and having worked under him, that's exactly the type of thing that he'll relish as another opportunity to put that right. That would have hurt him on Wednesday. I've been there myself, playing for Aberdeen and having lost 5-0. I think the game in particular at Ibrox, and Dell doesn't respond well as any manager to that. I think he prides himself on his team being resolute, being hard to beat, defensively being very solid, and I think that's been the kind of basis from which Kilmarnock have built from in recent seasons, which has gave them the opportunity to be as successful as what they have been. So I think he'll be reminding his team of those principles, and that's what they have to be to get back to. And we've seen that, how good they can be defensively, how strong they are and how commanding they can be at the back, and that's what they'll need to be against Dundee United again at the weekend.
All right, well, let's now move on to Aberdeen versus St Johnstone. St Johnstone level on points with Kilmarnock, but ahead of them on goal difference. They travel to Aberdeen, who are winless in their last 4. Cammy, can you see St Johnstone getting anything from Pittodrie?
Listen, if there's any time to play Aberdeen in recent times, it's certainly just now, because as you say, no wins in 4. It was a difficult game to judge both teams, Celtic and Aberdeen, midweek with the weather that they had to play in. The quality wasn't great from both sides, but it was a defeat for Aberdeen. They'd be good at Pittodrie this season up to that game. It's probably the perfect game from Aberdeen's point of view to have a look at and have a home game, 2 home games in a row they've got now coming up. So they'll be looking to get back on track. But for St Johnstone, certainly, I think this season, looking at St Johnstone, I think going forward, they've got much more of a threat at the top end of the pitch. They've got 3 or 4 players. Kimpioka, again, Nicky Clark's back involved. These guys can score goals. So there is that threat at the top of the pitch that Aberdeen will need to be wary of. And again, St Johnstone will go up there trying to take some sort of points away from this one, because they've had a fairly decent start to the season.
Well, Aberdeen, they had that brilliant start to the season, Mikey. They'll be really, really keen to get back to winning ways, won't they?
Yeah, but I think this moment that they're in it currently was probably always going to come for Aberdeen. I think there was always going to be a slight dip in form, and it was about how they reacted from that. So, of course, they had an incredible start to the season, and everything was so positive and confidence was really high at the time. But I think this slight dip was probably going to come, and that would be the kind of first test for them. So I think being at home, St Johnstone travelling up there will be a game for Aberdeen that they'll look at and think this is an opportunity for us to get back to winning ways. However, having watched St Johnstone at the weekend against Rangers, I was impressed with St Johnstone and how Valakari wants to try and play. There was a control about their game, where they tried to build, they tried to play through the lines and pick and choose their times to try and utilise the pace that Cammy touched on that they've got at the top end of the pitch. So it won't be an easy game at all for Aberdeen, but on the balance, I think on the balance of play, I think Aberdeen are the stronger side too, despite the form that they're in. We'll look to try and get 3 points.
That's another very interesting fixture. Just moving on to Motherwell, who are at St Mirren on Saturday. Cammy, again, another tough fixture for a side that have lost their last 3, isn't it?
It certainly is, and Stuart Kettlewell's been fairly critical of his players recently. Defensively, certainly, the goals they're leaking. We'll be a little bit concerned that it's been a lot of goals have conceded in recent games, so they'll need to tighten that up. They'll need to be much better defensively, which we know they can be. So they'll just be looking to bounce back. It will be another difficult game because St Mirren being at home, they'll want to try and get back on track again. It's another team that's had a kind of stop-start, inconsistent season. But again, all these teams are round about each other, so much to play for in that game, and I'm pretty sure it'll be a very close one as well.
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
All right, well, one final game of the weekend on Sunday, Ross County versus Rangers. I mean, following that 6-0 win midweek over Kilmarnock, Mikey, for Rangers, how impressed were you with that team and with that squad and that result?
To be honest, it wasn't a result I seen coming. I thought Rangers would probably win the game, but not by that margin. Having said that, it looks like they're they're really reaping the rewards of a really strong European performance last Thursday when they played in Europe. So they kind of got over the line against St Johnstone last weekend, and then I think they've consolidated on or built on that with a really convincing win against Kilmarnock at Ibrox. So they'll be looking to carry that on and use that momentum that they've kind of built. It's always difficult going Thursday to Sunday and then having to play midweek again, but they've kind of come through it with flying colours. So if Rangers want to kind of get back to the level that they're expected to be at and the level of performance which will bring the results, then they need to go and try and win again at the weekend, which, given the kind of form that they're in at the moment, I expect them to do.
What was the difference in that match, Cammy, especially considering other results earlier in the season?
I think a slight change in formation, personnel as well. With Danilo and Igmani coming up front, had Hadji on the pitch, who's exciting. James Tavernier was obviously back in the team and looked back to his kind of old normal self, attacking wise, going forward, creating, scoring obviously a goal as well. So yeah, there was loads of positives on Wednesday night. But again, this is a question mark. Can Rangers produce that week in, week out? Because that's what's expected of them. They're expected to produce these performances week in, week out, and they'll be expected of that on Sunday at Ross County. And then obviously they've got a small matter, a cup final coming up as well. So they'll want to go into that with full confidence, and this is where it starts here and now.
Can you see an upset on the cards though, Mikey? There was that 3-2 win for the home side at the end of last season as well.
It's always possible, and it's always a difficult game playing Ross County. But I think given where Rangers are at the moment, I think Ross County losing heavily last weekend will have taken its toll on those players as well. And I think probably, given that Rangers have just beat Kilmarnock 6-0, I think it's probably it's not the team that Ross County necessarily will want to face this weekend either. So, of course, it's always possible. But I think Rangers will be going up there, full of confidence and full of belief that they can do the job, as Cammy said. They have to start being more consistent and getting to the levels that's expected of them, both internally and externally from their supporters. So I think they'll be fully confident that they can get the job done. All
right, well, before we go, Mikey, your Ayr United are away to Partick Thistle in the Championship on Saturday. How are you feeling ahead of that one?
Yes, I think there's certainly a bit more of a spring in the step within the squad. With a bit of a difficult period before the last kind of 3 games, but we've kind of managed to get back to the level of performance that the manager expects, and we're kind of feeling a bit more confident ourselves. But we're not under any illusions that Saturday won't bring similar challenges as to what we've faced in the past. We know what Partick can offer, we know their strengths. But we feel that we're in a good place, and we need to remember what we're good at and what we can bring to the game. So we're looking forward to it. We're excited about it. The next run of fixtures will be challenging, but it's what we're ready for and what we need to be able to deal with.
Well, you did move to Ayr in the summer from Livingston. How are you enjoying life at Somerset Park?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a little bit kind of stop-start with injury and getting up to speed. But yeah, I know the manager well, and I know Wits, his assistant, well as well. So I know how they like to do things and how they like to operate. And I think that the challenge of going in and trying to help Ayr be successful, compete at the top of the league, and really fulfil those ambitions that the club have just now. It's a club certainly going in the right direction, and I was delighted to be given an opportunity to be part of that. So it's been great. A little bit frustrating at the start, but currently as we stand, it's nice to be back playing and the team to be winning.
All right, well, all the best this weekend. That is all we have got time for today. Many thanks to Cammy Bell and Mikey Devlin, and thank you for listening. Now, Sportssound will have all the live action on BBC Radio Scotland across the weekend, and Sportscene will bring you the highlights on Saturday and Sunday evenings. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Have a very good Friday. Have a very good weekend. We will see you soon. Goodbye.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.